First of all, let's just get to the product launch itself and get that out of the way here, Brian. What did you make of the new iPad Pro and the iMac? What do they do in terms of changing the game, if at all?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say changing the game, but there are definitely progressive movements that Apple is making in its product lines in terms of bringing in new features, faster processors, better displays, a lot of it very Zoom ready for all of this video conferencing that we've been doing these days. I think what gets interesting to watch is how we've always been watching how the iPad line and the Mac line have been inching closer and closer together, and where Apple's going to be going with this. And with all the stuff that they've packed into the new iPad Pro, it's more and more powerful, more and more faster. The camera's better. It's, in many cases, you could argue even exceeds the capabilities of some of these Macs. So I think that was one of the most interesting things to watch for, is just how much is going into one of these. In fact, if you max out one of these iPad Pros, complete with all the accessories, you can get close to a $3,000 system. So we're talking pretty expensive products as well, too. But again, that's on an extreme end.
So, Brian, what does it tell us about the forthcoming iPhone, normally in the autumn? And tell me, are they going to be able to deliver all these given the component shortage?
Yeah, so kind of two questions there. To the first point, I think, the tablets and the computers that they launched today, I don't know if that would have so much of a bearing on the phone. Obviously, on the phone, they're still moving ahead with all the advancements they're making there. There are some synergies between the products, but I think more towards your second part of your question, the component shortages obviously is not the ideal situation for the industry. We're seeing tightness across the board. But the good thing is that Apple is relatively sheltered from a lot of this, not only because they've just got such this world-class supply chain that can manage all their suppliers with very far lead times in advance. But most importantly, they have a lot of leverage with their suppliers, right? Because they are Apple at the end of the day, and the suppliers, will go out of their way to make sure that they're keeping one of their top customers happy. And so to your point about iPhones and whether there will be any delays there, like I said, there is tightness. There's no denying that that's happening. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe there's some slight delay by a few weeks, or maybe if there's some price adjustments or whatever it might be. But in general, I think the shorter answer to your question is no. I don't think there will be any major impact there, because again, it is Apple at the end of the day. And even with the products that were announced last night, we were looking at an iPad that was launched. The launch time is just a few weeks later than it normally is, but generally no major impact. And so it goes back again to my point that Apple, at least compared to a lot of the other folks in the devices industry, Apple, just because of their supply chain capabilities, is less affected than the others.
Brian, I want to talk about AirTag. Certainly would help someone like me find my things. I'm constantly losing them. I'm just wondering, how much of a game changer is it? Can it be as successful as the AirPods, for instance?
Well, that's what everyone's hoping for, right? If you look at some of the existing solutions in the market, there's a smaller company called Tile. There's Samsung recently has started to roll some of these out, but none of these have had the might of Apple to really bring them out forward. And if you think about it, actually, it's quite fascinating. Just the way that they've priced these AirTags, about $30 each. You can buy them in a pack of 4 for $100. So these things, if you think about it, will become impulse buys, and that makes it easier, especially with the marketing muscle of Apple as well too. It makes it easier to just sell these sorts of things, and while these $20, $30 kind of per unit prices might not be high, you multiply them by, I'm tag them on my keys, put them on my dog, put them on my suitcase, put them on my remote control, whatever it might be, that kind of thing. These could very well become that, small little product that actually does become a very interesting business for Apple in the years ahead.
The thing is, some people are saying that the AirTags would prompt a new wave of complaints that perhaps Apple is hurting smaller rivals. Your take on that?
Hurting smaller rivals. Presumably they're talking about folks like Tile, one of the companies I mentioned earlier. And Tile's already they're a decent sized business, but again, they don't have that might of Apple. I would say that, and Tile's been in business for a good number of years, at least I think 7-8 years now, and they've been doing quite well. But I think, at the end of the day, the way that the industry here operates is, of course, you're increasingly going to have more of this consolidation. You're going to have a lot of these large giants like Apple who have a lot of not just scale, but also keep in mind, Apple has this synergy within its ecosystem that works to its advantage. So yeah, of course, that puts pressure on some of these guys that might have more of a standalone business. But there's also a lot of the benefits that do come from, you know, these large suppliers that are going into the space as well.
It's also introducing paid podcasting service. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting as well. So, you know, this new service will allow podcasters to more easily monetize their podcasts. And of course, it's Apple in the process takes, I think it was a 30% cut, similar to what they do with their app store as well. I think this is interesting because obviously you get a more, I guess, curated set of premium podcasts that folks not just want to listen to, but are willing to pay money for. And all with the convenience of going through, you know, the Apple store and being able to get everything that you need from there. So, or the Apple services, I should say. So it is something that I think will be it's a nice thing on the side. It certainly helps boost Apple's or fortifies Apple's broader services strategy. And again, margins on their services tend to be quite nice for them as well, too. Certainly helps to boost things even beyond just the hardware revenues that they're making. So, but again, I think at the end of the day, the podcasts are more of something that are, I guess, on the side, more supplemental, obviously not something, you know, these big cash cows like the iPhone is.
Tell me, Bryan, what about the companies most exposed in the Asia Pacific to Apple, and whether certainly if we come out of a COVID world, we might see a slight decline in sales as people have been, of course, buying these things while they've been in lockdown? And if so, could that not be a blessing for the component side of things where we've got shortages?
Well, so, yeah, there's always that concern that post-COVID, all of this demand that we've had working from home, staying from home comes back down. When does it come back to earth? And how dramatic of a fall is it? Our thinking is that, you know, while there is going to be a natural correction going into the upcoming years, the reality is that a lot of the effects that, you know, the habits that we've learned in this whole pandemic, a lot of the stay-at-home period, and, you know, basically we're going to be going into this period of a lot more of a hybrid type of a workforce where not only are people working from home part of the time, even if they may be going back to the office, students may be studying from home when they need to rather than always going in. And those in turn will require devices. So my point is that the demand is still going to be sticking around, even if it might not be as lofty as we've seen over the past year, that a lot of those fundamental aspects of the demand, the world has changed basically where that demand is going to stick around. And that will help keep a lot of these volumes moving. Whether it's for Apple or for other players in the industry as well, too. You look at the rest of the PC industry, right? PC industry grew 12, 13% last year. We're expecting it to grow 18% going into this upcoming year because there is still a lot of backlog that still needs to be cleared. There's just demand is still exceeding supply in those cases. And so, you know, whether it's an Asian supplier, whether it is, you know, other vendors in the industry, that's still something that is going to help propel the market in the year ahead.